All right, it's 4:33, so why don't we go ahead and get started? My name is Julian Thielman. I'm an assistant dean of admission here at Reed College, working with students from Portland, but not the rest of Oregon, Seattle, but not the rest of Washington, as well as students in Connecticut, Delaware, Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, New Jersey, and Rhode Island. And welcome to the Neuroscience Faculty Office Hours. Some quick information about how this is going to run. This session will be recorded, so as questions pop up, as you have questions, please just go ahead and toss them into the chat so that our panelists can either filter them out or I can bring them up as if they haven't been addressed yet. With that, I am going to turn it over to Kara to introduce herself.
Yeah, thanks, Julian. Hi, everybody. My name is Kara Cerveny. I'm one of the professors in the biology department, and I'm also the chair of the neuroscience committee this year and next year. I wanted to just briefly say that we're really excited to talk to you about the neuroscience program, and I want to make it geared toward your questions. So go ahead and ask any questions you might have about the program. This is an interdisciplinary major, and so you really get to sample courses, both breadth and depth in biology and in psychology. And then typically students will specialize in either some sort of biological research or psychological research for their senior thesis. The work in my lab goes into that biological bin, and we study how eyes and brains develop. We use the zebrafish as a model system and study how particular genes and signaling pathways influence cell behaviors. We use a lot of live imaging to do that. So we use a confocal microscopy and light sheet imaging. So if you have questions about any of those kinds of things, I'm happy to address those, as well as more questions about coursework. The other person who's joining us from the neuroscience program is Michael Pitts, who's a professor in psychology, and he just joined. And before he introduces himself, we also invited a student to join us, and Surabhi is going to introduce herself and talk a little bit about why she came to Reed and is a neuroscience major.
Thanks, Kara. Hi, everyone. I'm Surabhi, and I am a current junior neuroscience major, music minor. Yeah, a couple of reasons why I came to Reed was mainly for the access to faculty. Because of the smaller class sizes, it's really easy to build those one-on-one relations between the students and faculty members. Like, for example, I could just walk in the biology department in the building and then say hi to Kara in her office and stuff. It's like really it's really easy to talk to the faculty members here, and the research opportunities at Reed are like there's so many, and it's really easy to approach a professor and ask them what sort of research they're doing, and if they have any positions in their lab, if you're interested in doing certain projects with them. So yeah, those are a couple of the reasons.
Oh, Kara, it looks like you're...
Yeah, Michael, do you want to, sorry, thanks, Surabhi. Michael, do you want to introduce yourself real briefly?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Michael Pitts. I'm a professor in the psychology department, and I'm a cognitive neuroscientist. I study visual perception, attention, and I'm really interested in the difference in the brain between conscious and unconscious processing. Yeah, I'm happy to say more later on, but nice to see everyone.
So just a heads up to our students, because this session is recorded, if y'all don't mind keeping your devices on mute, that would be super helpful. Just if you don't mind doing that. So with those introductions out of the way, Kara, Michael, it would be great if y'all could give us sort of an overview of the neuroscience program here at Reed.
Yeah, sure. I'll go ahead and start, and Michael, you can jump in. So we're really excited to tell you about what we think is the best major on campus. And this is a place where you get to really explore, like I said, biology and psychology. When we built this major, it was really from student interest and student motivation. and kind of asking for something that really unified and bridged the two disciplines. And so students who are neuroscience majors take introductory coursework in biology and psychology and some math, and then they have some chemistry. And then you have some opportunities to have a lot of choice in terms of upper level biology courses and upper level psychology courses that you take. One of the things that Surabhi kind of alluded to was this emphasis on research. And one of the things that I think we're both really proud about in terms of the neuroscience program is that many of our upper level courses, so courses at the 300 level, have an integrated laboratory experience that isn't just do the laboratory experiences that we've planned for you, but more sort of do a few experiments that we've planned for you to give you the foundation to then develop your own question and engage with that, plan out your experiment, and you get to, as I like to say, ride the scientific roller coaster of the highs and the lows of actual science. I always like to explain to students that I don't know the answer when this question that you're addressing is a completely new question, and we are exploring together. And to me, that's one of the real excitement sort of generating things that happens in science, but also one of the things that can be frustrating sometimes. And so the other thing I wanted to mention is that we are really working to build a community of students who are involved in the neuroscience program, not just biology or psychology, but really starting to host some events that kind of bridge boundaries and connect students with each other in terms of kind of, we had this year, we had a tour of all the different labs that are involved in both biology and in the neuroscience program. And then we're hoping to continue that. We also have students who talk about their research. Yeah, so I think if people have specific questions, and Michael, if you want to add anything, feel free.
Yeah, I agree. I think my favorite part of Reed is getting to focus on research, both in our classes and during the summer and in senior thesis. And like Kara said, it's, beginning introduction classes. We might have you practice some experiments that we know what the result's going to be. But then once you get to those mid and upper level classes, you get a chance to ask your own questions. I have students do semester-long independent research projects. And we really don't know what the answer is going to be, what the data are going to show. And those are exciting, I think, both for students and the faculty.
Yeah, and Michael touched on thesis, and one of the things that I kind of glossed over was that there is a required senior thesis. So all students do a thesis, and that project is developed in collaboration with your on-campus advisor. There are also opportunities for students to work off campus with researchers at local larger institutions like the Oregon Health and Sciences University, which is the medical campus across the river from us. It's about 5 miles away, as well as other institutions. And sometimes with large data sets, both Michael and I have large data projects as well as smaller projects. Sometimes you have access to large data sets and then can learn new methods for analyzing them too. So one of the questions that just popped up in the chat is, what is the best way to ask the professor for research opportunities? And does the professor help based on available options to select the appropriate opportunity? So I'll read a little bit in between the lines here. And so one is that if you are, I would say one of the best things to do is to look at the web pages and ask yourself, like, does this research sound exciting to me? Or when you have a professor at the introductory level, go up to them after class or go see them during office hours and ask them to talk about their research. So you can learn what's really sounds exciting to you. And then you can talk about, well, are there opportunities in your specific lab? Or maybe you have some interest that's not represented at Reed. And that's a place where you can meet with either your academic advisor or with one of the professors in neuroscience and then talk about off-campus opportunities in terms of either summer research opportunities. The NSF and several other foundations will fund summer research opportunities for undergraduates. Those are competitive, but with the sort of right application, I've seen a lot of students succeed at landing those during the summer. And then, like I said, there are opportunities for connections with folks at local places like OHSU. So I hope that answered that. Surabhi, do you want to talk just a little bit about how you approached Eric about research opportunities? Because I know that you're doing an independent study with him right now.
Yeah, so I took Eric's class. Eric's the other neurobio professor in the biology department. So I took his class my sophomore year, and I was really interested in the stuff he was working on. So I just quite literally walked up to him during his office hours. I'm not joking when I say it's very, very simple to go approach a professor. So I just talked to him during his office hours one day, and I was like, here's something I'm interested in doing with the frogs. He works on frogs, and together we brainstormed like a project to do, and we've been doing that project for the entire year, and I'm probably going to continue doing that in the summer, and I don't know if it leads to something, then maybe do my thesis on it. But it's really simple. You just, like Kara said, look at the professor's research on their website and stuff and see if it interests you, and approach the professor with, you don't even have to have like a project in mind or anything. If you just say you're interested, I'm sure you can find some way to come up with a project.
Real quick before we move on to another question, you said you were interested in the research this professor was doing. You mentioned frogs, and you mentioned that you have an ongoing project with this professor. Can you elaborate a little bit on what that project is that you're doing and what the research was that you were interested in?
Yeah, so Eric focuses a little bit more on like the neural connection between the brain and the vocal cords, like, so the frog is larynx. So more than the physiological part of neuroscience and actually like focusing on those links, I was interested in the behavioral aspect. So with Eric, there's a species of frogs, Xanthus laevis, and we made a synthetic male call using like a computer software, and we're trying to see if the female Xanthus laevis respond to the synthetic call, to see if to see what aspects of the call are important, whether it's the pitch of the call that's important, or how fast the trills are in the call. And right now we're still collecting preliminary data, but the frogs are so far responding to the synthetic call, which is good news, because we can move on to the next step of the project, which is seeing which parts of the call are important.
Super cool. Thanks for that. And I think we had one question that maybe you can answer briefly. Are zebrafish the only subjects which are used for research, or are there other organisms available? Do you want to answer that real quick?
Sure, yeah, of course. So in my lab, we work primarily with zebrafish because of their genetic tractability, and their embryos are transparent, so we can do a lot of live imaging. But there are many other organisms that we use actually in my developmental biology class, as well as other experimental organisms in the department. So there are Drosophila, so flies, both larvae, adults, and cells. Like Surabhi just mentioned, there's Xanthus laevis frogs and other species of frogs. I actually have a collaboration with someone who works on cave fish, so we have some cave fish data. No cave fish here. So those are fish that live underground and have lived there for so long that they've actually lost their eyes and have a lot of other interesting evolutionary adaptations. In psychology, there are other organisms that people use. Humans is one of them, but also rats. I think, and I feel like I'm missing. In biology, we have a lot of other organisms too. We have cichlids, a number of different fishes, also plants, lots of wildlife, where their campus is right next to this amazing sort of natural space, the canyon, that has sort of many different organisms and species that people use for a variety of experiments.
Yeah, in psychology, are humans, rats, and pigeons. And then we have some thesis students working on data from experiments on non-human primates. We don't have non-human primates here on campus, but collaborations between faculty and other institutes. So students occasionally get a chance to work with that data as well.
So it looks like there's some questions in here, kind of following up on the thesis theme and then thinking about, so I'll take this thesis question and then we can transition to, there are a couple questions about what happens after read. So for thesis, I'll choose one of my, a great thesis that I kind of recently mentored, and then maybe Michael, you can choose one that you've had in your lab. So I would say that a couple of years ago, a student came to my lab after taking my developmental biology class, kind of like Surabhi did with Eric Zornick, and said, I really want to work in your lab. What can I do? And so she was very interested in a project that we have in the lab about how the visual system in the brain grows in response to new connections from the developing eye. And so that was a project we started many years ago, actually, and had some really exciting new data on. And so she helped finish a manuscript that is getting ready to be submitted. And then she also kind of went off on her own and started a whole other project about neurodegeneration and using this model for lifelong growth and remodeling of the visual system to begin to address questions of neurodegeneration. And a number of students now have followed up on that project, which is really exciting. So it's kind of starting a new direction for research in our lab. And she's now a graduate student at Caltech. So that's one pathway. I'll just say that a lot of other students go on to do a lot of other things. I've had students in my lab who've gone on to medical school, other graduate schools, students who've gone on to be high school teachers, students who've gone on to be landscape architects, people who have gone to work in policy and government. So I think their interests have changed over time and led them where they are. Michael?
Oh yeah, too many interesting thesis projects to choose from. But I guess what's fresh on my mind is one thesis student I have right now, who's doing part 2 of a study that started a year ago with a different thesis student. Some of you may be familiar with these images that some perceptual psychologists study, like the Necker cube or the face, where you can it's a single image, but you can perceive them in 2 different ways. So we use a technique that we have a little more control in the lab called binocular rivalry, where we present one stimulus to the left eye and a completely different stimulus to the right eye. And the stimuli never change. The things going into the eye are always the same, but your perception changes from seeing one thing for a few seconds and then the other thing, and then back to the first thing, and it's kind of this constant alternation. So it's a good way to isolate perception from sensory input. And what we're trying to do with this new study is also isolate perception from motor output, reporting what you're perceiving to the experimenter. So one of my thesis students tried this new trick that was used one other time in an fMRI study, where you use eye tracking. And so we present these stripes that are moving to the left in one eye and these stripes that are moving to the right in the other eye. And you can tell what subjects are consciously seeing at any moment by tracking their eye movements. So the eye movements will it's called optokinetic nystagmus. They do this like smooth pursuit and then a saccade back. And you don't even have to ask the subjects what they're seeing. The eyes tell you what they're conscious of. And it's a nice setup. We have it going on in the lab right now. thesis student built a custom stereoscope using these cold mirrors because we needed the eye tracker to see through the mirrors. So he designed this, built it himself, got it to work. And then we have an eye tracker and EEG at the same time. So we're measuring the eyes, we're measuring the brain, and we can tell what people are seeing. And then we try to probe perception and cause a perceptual switch by presenting these little flashes of checkerboards on the screen. So first thesis student got quite far and got everything to work and was able to decode what people are seeing with their eye movements. And then my thesis student this year has now 15 sessions of brain data, and I just saw preliminary results last week, and they're really exciting. So we can pick up these brain activity differences when people's perception changes versus when it stays the same, even though nothing's changing on the sensory input, and they're not even responding other than these involuntary eye movements. Yeah, that's one of my current favorite ones.
Cool. So there was a question earlier in the chat about feedback and grading. Can you all talk a little bit about how that works in neuroscience?
Oh, you're muted there.
Sure, I can start. Yeah, sorry. I can start with that. First, I just wanted to say that, to emphasize that neuroscience is not a department. So you're really taking courses in psychology and you're taking courses in biology. And then you're doing a thesis project that is coming from that sort of integrated perspective. So what I'm going to say, I'll say primarily from the biology perspective and what goes on in biology courses. And then Michael, you can talk about psychology. I think we're very similar, honestly, so there's not going to be a ton of difference that you might notice. In biology, I'd say that at the introductory level, we have a lecture lab course, and so there is a large lecture that then there's time for you to, it's a sort of active, engaged lecture, but it's still a large lecture course. And then you have smaller labs, so you around 18 to 20 students in a lab that goes, that's coordinated with what's going on in lecture. And the current model, which I think we're probably going to stick with, there are 2 faculty members that we split the semester. So maybe I'll teach in one half of the semester, and then in the second half of the semester, typically I teach with someone who's teaching evolutionary behavioral kinds of questions, so animal behavior and from a genetics, genomics perspective, as well as a behavior perspective, whereas I'm teaching more from a genetic, cellular, molecular perspective, and you'll take that kind of course. We also have some smaller courses that are typically between 32 to 36 students that also have a lab at the introductory level, and those are much more topically focused. So there's one that Eric Zornick teaches about neurobiology, and then there's a couple other ones that are more ecology and evolution focused and so I'd say in those courses, you're getting a lot of feedback from your own work. So we'll do kind of like short quizzes, and they'll be self-graded or sort of automatically graded, kind of on the spot. But you're also getting feedback on more fulsome assignments and assessments where we give a lot of written feedback. We'll maybe even ask you to come see us if we don't understand what your answer is trying to get across. And really, that's the focus. I would say that if you're a person who wants to learn for the sake of learning and to really understand something, then the type of feedback that we're giving is not just, yeah, you got it, no, you didn't. But oftentimes I'll write a long sort of response to someone who did very well, and I just thought their answer was interesting, and I'd like to learn more about what they're thinking. So it's really a mode for us to engage with students sort of asynchronously, and maybe encourage them to come visit our office hours. As you move up into upper level courses, we have more seminar style courses where the classes are a little bit smaller, and so there's more time for discussion and small group work, as well as time to read primary literature and discuss. I think learning how scientists continue to learn is really important to us. And so that's one of the things we focus on. And so there's a lot of sort of feedback from each other in the class. So there's peer feedback as well as faculty feedback in those settings. Do you want to add anything, Michael?
Yeah, maybe I can jump in from the psychology end. So our intro psych course, it's a 1-semester course offered in the fall, and we have usually 7 or 8 of us in the psychology department, giving 2 weeks of lectures each to kind of introduce students to our research sub area. And there's one of us takes a turn every few years to be the lead instructor of the labs. And you're with us the whole semester. We teach what we call the concept labs. And then we have another PhD level staff member doing the applied lab. So you're actually in your first semester working with data. We do a data collection, data analysis. You run statistics, you visualize your results. And then we have a series they're almost like lab rotation modules. We call them 200 level psych science labs. And they're quarter units. So you can take, I think neuroscience, you have to take at least 2 of those. If you're a psychology major, you take 4 of those. And those are small. Those are 16 students, and we actually get into the lab. So in the one I teach, cognitive neuroscience, we're putting electrode caps on each other. We're collecting EEG data, analyzing it together. And then one of the final projects is try to propose a new experiment based on the one that we did together, come up with a new hypothesis, come up with an experimental design, present that in a paper and a research talk. And we give lots of feedback early on so you can improve your research design and experimental skills. And then in psychology, we have these mid-level courses we call the core courses, 300 level. They're usually 24 students, and they have a lab attached. And that's where I mentioned before, you could do an independent semester-long project in some of these labs. And then several of us teach upper level courses. Next spring, I'm going to be teaching my favorite course, 400 level attention and consciousness research. It's usually 8 to 12 students, and we get into the lab and actually design and conduct experiments. Yeah, so that's a quick overview of kind of the progression of the courses in psychology. And yes, I agree with what Kara said about the grading. We try not to focus on grades. We do record grades, but we try to give feedback that's going to be beneficial, whatever level you're currently at, to help you, to meet you where you are and help you improve.
We've gotten a question from a student directed towards Surabhi about minors, asking about balancing the coursework between a music minor and a neuro major, as well as what got you into the music minor. So can you talk a little bit about how you manage your time with those different things, and also, again, what got you interested in music as well as neuroscience?
Yeah, definitely. The neuroscience major does have quite a bit of classes to take, which are all very important. I was fortunate enough to come in to Reed with a lot of credits from my high school, specifically like a lot of Spanish credits. So I had a couple of free elective spots in my schedule, and I was able to take a lot more music classes. And for the music minor, I know we have to take 5 classes in the music department, and one of the 5 classes has to be a 300 level music class. In terms of like getting involved in music at Reed, or before Reed, I have been like a classically trained musician since I was very young. And if it wasn't for neuroscience, I probably would have become a music major. So definitely neuroscience took the lead, but I still wanted to incorporate music into my education I read, and that's why I'm taking the minor. Also, fun fact, the research I'm doing with Eric was inspired by me having a music minor. That's how the idea actually came to be. But yeah, it's very doable. There are quite a few different classes you can take in the music department that range from very like technical music theory or theoretical music like ethnology, music ethnology, or you could take performance-based music classes. For example, I'm in the school's choir right now, and that's how I'm getting a lot of my music credit. I also took a conducting class, which is really cool with Shohei, who's in the music department. But yeah, it's very doable to manage it. And I think if you're committed and interested enough in the subject, it's not really like a chore. It's more like a challenge, an exciting challenge to take on.
Awesome, thanks for that. We have another student in the chat who says, I know psychology labs can be a little competitive to get into. Is it similar with neuroscience labs? And I think we can maybe expand this to talk a bit about how advising works in this program. So to Kara, Michael, do you guys want to touch on this a little bit?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not sure getting into labs means you can get into labs taking classes. You could, I have students that take our intro psych course and say, I'm really interested in the things you study. How do I get involved? And I say, come to our weekly lab meetings, volunteer some time during your first year to help us collect EEG data. Maybe it's not for you. Maybe you really like it. So sometimes people don't like working with animal models or putting gel on people's heads. But we give you that chance to experience it. There's no commitment. We do a lot of in psych, and I think it's the case in bio. You can kind of volunteer, check out some labs, see what you're interested in doing on a day-to-day. And then it's not like you have to wait till your senior year to start a research project. You can do that various ways during the academic year, during the summer. Yeah, in terms of competitive, I wouldn't say competitive. I mean, psychology and neuroscience are popular growing majors, but we're really happy to have 4 new faculty next year in psychology. So we're gonna have more labs available, more topics available. So yeah, you should be able to take part in any lab you're interested in.
Yeah, I think I would echo that. I think that neuroscience is definitely a growing major, and we're excited about that. And I think interest is holding steady in biology and psychology, or increasing as well. So we really enjoy that energy that comes with new students who come in and bring fresh perspective to existing labs. I think that we really strive, and like Surabhi mentioned at the beginning, we really strive to be an open and welcoming place, and have projects that are really completely student-driven around that issue, as well as having kind of an open door policy. If I'm in my office and I'm not on a Zoom call, then I'll just, I'll leave my door open and students stop by to say hi or to ask questions. We also have dedicated office hour time. So each faculty member has posted office hours, 2 to 3 hours a week outside, on their door, and their door is open. You can also make appointments if those times don't work. So I think we really try to be accessible. And like Michael said, I would say that most people who join my lab start by coming to a lab meeting to see what it's like. So in lab meeting, what we do is each student will present kind of an overview of the project they're working on, and then something very specific about what they're doing in lab that week. Sometimes they'll share data that they're having trouble organizing or analyzing or making sense of. Other times they're super excited and say, hey, I got this really cool result. Look, when we manipulate this gene, now these cells do this other weird thing. And can you watch this movie with me? And how can we analyze this? And we throw out really cool, fun ideas. Other times we'll even read a research article that's really relevant for the work that goes on in the lab, and then we'll have a discussion about that. In terms of courses, I think that we really work to accommodate as many students as possible. So even if you end up on a wait list, don't get off the wait list. We work ways around of figuring out ways to accommodate students. And students will often register for more courses than they actually are going to take. And then they'll do a little shopping sometimes. And then I always tell people, if you're on the wait list and you're really excited about this course, just stay in and the spots will open up. And I think that's almost always the case, at least in courses that I've taught. Yeah, I hope that answered the question for folks. Looks like there's another question. It says, what is a typical day and routine of a neuroscience or psychology major at Reed? And does it get hectic when exams and senior year comes? Michael, do you want to take that? I don't know if there is a typical day, but you can give a
Yeah, I was just starting to type an answer. I'll just I'll speak the answer. Yeah, I would say another thing I love about Reed is it's changing all the time. So a different day, different things to do. You could be taking classes, having discussions, really focusing on a reading. You could be doing lab work. You could be looking at data, collecting data, preparing some research report. And yeah, definitely there's an ebb and a flow to each semester and each academic year. So things get intense certain periods of time and things are relaxed other periods of time. And the nice thing is, it's not intense the entire time. There's deadlines and there's a sense of accomplishment when you get there. Yeah, and we try to keep in mind there's students in my class, that's not the only class you're taking. I know you're busy with other things, so we try to balance things and stagger the timing of things. But I would say it's a positive, most of the time, a positive level of stress that we try to get to that optimal, you're not too relaxed, you're really working hard, but you're not over the limit, at least most of the year.
Surabhi, do you have a perspective on this as someone who is living the life of a student?
Yeah, I definitely do spend a lot of time in lab, whether it's Eric's lab or I also am a research assistant in the psychology department with Chris Anderson. So I'm spending my time between the two labs. If not that, I'm in classes, but I feel if you carve out time for yourself and make sure to do that, especially at Reed, it's very doable and easy to manage. I know there are pockets of time when I have to myself where I'm not in a lab, we're not doing homework, and just kind of going around seeing Portland, which is really nice. It doesn't get hectic all the time, only certain times, but that's very typical of any college.
Sweet, thanks for that. We have a student asking about professors helping in MCAT test prep. Do any of y'all want to speak to that?
I mean, I'll just say that your academic advisor may be a person who could be a resource for you in terms of connecting you with the Center for Life Beyond Reed, which is what I think at some places it's called the Career Counseling or Career Center. I think that our center is really excellent in connecting students with all kinds of resources, whether they are jobs after college or research opportunities or internships. If there's something you're interested in doing that isn't specifically science focused, but comes from, like, say, a neuroscience perspective. There's a student I was just thinking of who applied for a summer fellowship who's working with some of the groups in Portland around houselessness and housing coalitions, and she's a neuroscience major and has done really cool research, but really felt called to do that kind of work. And that was facilitated through a connection with the Center for Life Beyond Reed. Faculty are not going to help you with test prep per se, unless it's a test in their own class where they're going to help you learn the material as best they can. Yeah.
I think I can speak yeah, I'm currently preparing for the MCAT. I plan on taking it in a month, if all goes well. Definitely there are subjects on the MCAT that are related to some of the classes that you will take as a neuro major, specifically general chemistry and organic chemistry. They're on the MCAT, and definitely taking those classes and the depth in which those classes went to was really helpful for testing. I think if you take those classes before you take the MCAT, I think you'll have a very solid understanding, especially with how in depth of content like the professors go into. That has been extremely helpful. So, though they're not helping directly with prep, the content of the courses that they teach and to the depth in which the professors go, has been extremely helpful.
Wonderful. And I would definitely encourage students to check out the webpage that I just put in the chat for this is the Center for Life Beyond Reads page on how we help to prepare students for stuff like the MCAT. There's a student asking to both of our professors, going back to your college days, what made you feel like neuroscience, what made you feel like psychology were a good fit for you, and what made you interested in the human brain?
I'll let Michael take that, because I was not a neuroscience major in college, so you can come to the discipline later in life.
Oh, there's no such thing. Yeah, when we were back in those days, I mean, there's such thing as neuroscience, but most colleges didn't have a program or a degree in neuroscience. I started out my undergrad as a chemical engineering major, and I was kind of good at math and science in high school, and my parents said, oh, okay, you can make money being an engineer. So I tried that. And then my first and second year, I took these psychology classes that were focused on brain and behavior relationships. And I learned psychology is not all about psychotherapy and sitting on the couch and talking about your problems. You can actually use science and math to study the brain. And I thought that was way more interesting. Nothing against engineers. I thought that was very interesting. And I think what really captured me was this neuropsychology course I took that was all about what happens when we damage certain parts of the brain and how selective some of the deficits can be. I remember that class. It was kind of a read style class, 7 or 8 students, and we read these case studies and had discussions. And yeah, I think that's what really hooked me. And then I had eventually gravitated towards visual perception, because I thought it was really cool that you could basically do math with the photoreceptor inputs to figure out how we see color. And then I did psychology in grad school, behavioral neuroscience, and then perceptual psychology. And then I didn't really do neuroscience like in name of a program until I was a postdoc. Yeah, so I think some of you may be deciding biology, psychology, neuroscience. I would say just take the classes you want to take. The name on the degree matters a little bit less. Follow what you're interested in, but keep an open mind. Don't, you may not know right now what's out there. So take classes and see what you gravitate towards.
Yeah, I'll second that and say that I think keeping an open mind and trying out new things, I think is really important. So I started out college as a biochemistry major and actually ended up doing biology and chemistry as a kind of dual degree, where we had that option, and got really fascinated in sort of how molecules work together, and didn't really get interested in the brain until I was a postdoc, actually. So as a grad student, I was very sort of cell and molecular based, and then as I started my postdoctoral training, looking at eye development, I suddenly began to realize that this was not just sort of cells working together, but that they're building and self-assembling this really cool computational system. And so the thing that drew me to everything that I do is microscopy and the amazing sort of advances that have been made through collaborations with physics and engineering and biology kind of combined to really understand how to build the best kind of microscope to address the question you're interested in, And then now collaborating more with statisticians and computer scientists to really understand the large data sets that we're getting from our multimodal imaging of brain development. So, I mean, I feel like there's always questions and I'm always going to be excited about them. So that's really my goal when I teach too, is that, sort of highlighting questions, historical questions and open questions and helping you find your questions. There is a question about study abroad here that I want to get to, which is, are there abroad opportunities for research in neuroscience in sophomore and junior year? So there are several programs that we have that are specifically open to many students and cater to neuroscience students. And some of those programs, built into those programs, just like in our own curriculum, there are research opportunities built in. Yeah. What else?
There was a question earlier about developmental psychology and the effect environments make on the development of a childhood brain, but I'm wondering if we can get a little bit more broad and talk about specializing in individual things within neuroscience and how students get end up pursuing more specified things within this field.
Sure. I think one I would say is that what you do as an undergraduate doesn't necessarily mean that that's what you're going to do as a graduate student or whatever position you take on. But I would say that as you work your way up through our curricula, you have opportunities to specialize. So these upper level courses that we're talking about, both in psychology and in biology, are really topical. So there's a course that's neurophysiology, or there's animal behavior, or there's developmental biology, which I teach. We're hoping we're going to have a systems neuroscience or systems neurobiology course, depending on who we end up hiring for an open position. And then in psychology, it's the same. Like, you have someone who teaches cognitive sciences right here with us, who looks at all different special sorts of ideas with cognition and attention. And then there are folks in the psychology department who study addiction. There's people who study sort of the biological basis of behavior, or psychopharmacology. So all kinds of subdisciplines that you can imagine. You can find someone who, even if that isn't their specific area of expertise, maybe they have, they can touch on it with you, or there's a way that you can sort of merge your interest in with their interest, either during thesis research or summer research.
Cool. Michael, do you have anything to add to that?
I would just give a quick plug for a new faculty member we have joining us next year, who's going to be studying judgment and decision making and neural circuits involved in there in rat models, using optogenetics, using psychopharmacology methods. So we're really excited about this new area. So we've always had a behavioral neuroscientist, we call it, and a cognitive neuroscientist. So really, the focus is broadly on brain and behavior in both cases, but typically our behavioral neuroscientists will study animal models and study things more related to neurotransmitters and as Kara mentioned, psychopharmacology, whereas cognitive neuroscience will study the human brain non-invasively. And we also have a comparative cognition person who studies learning and also uses rat models. So yeah, I think we cover neuroscience is an enormous field. Sometimes Kara and I go to this neuroscience conference that has over 30,000 people attend each year. And it's everything from studying, molecules and chemicals in the brain, all the way up to systems and circuits and the entire brain. So there's all those levels, and then there's all sorts of interesting questions you can ask about sensory motor processing, memory, behavior, development, yeah, clinical disorders, and so on.
Can you talk a bit? There was a question in the chat. Would you say math is a big part of neuroscience and psychology, and classes that students will take in the neuroscience program? Can you talk a bit more about math proficiency and what we would hope to see there?
Sure. I would say that yes, we do have a sort of quantitative reasoning requirement within the neuroscience program. So you need to take 2 courses that are these sort of quantitative courses. Typically, at least one of them is in the math department, either statistics or calculus or some sort of non-calculus based math or problem solving, probability. Or you can also take more of a sort of statistical methods course that's housed in psychology, where it's more practical, I think, about in terms of applying the statistical tests that you're doing and learning a little bit of the statistics behind why you're doing what you're doing. And in biology, we have a series of courses that are really computational biology and bioinformatics that will also count for that requirement. So I think as we move into a world that's just awash in data, we have to understand how to analyze that data, or at least how to make sense of it somewhat. And so that's something that we think is really important, that students have that experience with quantitative analysis of data. I was also going to just drop in the chat the catalog link for the neuroscience program, so you can take a look at specifically what the requirements are in terms of the biology and psychology coursework, as well as chemistry and/or physics and math.
Yeah, and I saw the last one of the last questions about physics and chem and OChem and math. So we designed the major so that students would have sort of the groundwork, the necessary groundwork, but then there's some options within the major, because some areas of neuroscience, it's much more important to have the organic chemistry background. Other areas of neuroscience, the math and physics is more relevant. And related to the previous question about math, you can take computer science courses. So for my area in neuroscience, it's more beneficial to have skills in computer science and statistics and machine learning, artificial intelligence, those sort of things, than chemistry, just because that's the level we're studying the brain. And I would say if you're sort of don't feel like you're a math person, I wouldn't say that should turn you off from neuroscience. You can do plenty of work without a sophisticated, math background. I think 2 courses is the minimum requirement, 2 math courses, but that includes computer science, statistics, computational biology. You can take there. You can take the psych stats course. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I just want to emphasize, someone asked, is it okay to come to college and in the neuroscience major with less knowledge about some of the subjects like math and physics? Definitely. Like, that's why you're coming to college, right? I definitely went to college and didn't have a strong background in physics at all, and or chemistry really. And I ended up being a biochemistry kind of person. So I think just letting your interest drive you. And I will also say that one of the reasons I came to Reed as a faculty member is because I really like the collaboration with students, and we're here to work with you. So if you're concerned about maybe where you're feeling like, oh, I don't have a ton of preparation in math, so maybe I shouldn't do this, maybe I should just be some major that doesn't require math. Actually, don't be scared by that. We're here to help you and help you navigate the curriculum. So your academic advisor is here to help you. Your faculty members in all your courses are here to help you. And in some of the larger introductory courses, there are near-peer mentors or learning assistants or teaching assistants that are also there to kind of help guide you, to say, hey, you should go talk to the professor. I'll go to office hours with you if you're a little bit nervous or shy.
So we're almost at time. So I would definitely encourage all of our students to pop any last questions in the chat. But one question did come up in the psychology of faculty office hours yesterday that I think is maybe applicable to all faculty office hours. And that is, how should a student who's interested in neuroscience prepare to come to read?
I
What did they say in psychology yesterday?
I think they had that exact same reaction.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess just to push back a little bit on the over preparation, like you're gonna come and you're interested in maybe being a neuroscience major, maybe psychology, biology. I would say the purpose of our introductory courses is exactly that, to see what you're interested in, to meet you where you're at, gradually introduce you to the fundamental concepts. So please don't feel like you need to be studying all summer before you get here to get started. Yeah, that's the purpose of your first year.
Yeah, I would say that one thing that I might recommend is just to kind of have a sense of what the requirements are for the various majors you're interested in. So, I think during orientation and your meeting with your academic advisor, you'll have an opportunity to really ask some questions. But, you can take a look at the catalog and say, oh, this major seems really exciting because they do this, or wow, there's a study abroad program where people go to Australia, or whatever it is that you're interested in. Yeah, and a lot of people don't know what they're doing, right? So I think that's the most popular incoming major is undecided, and that's totally fine. That's why you come to college too, to figure it out.
Two
I know.
excellent points, Kara. I totally agree. I would say the one thing you could do over the summer is just see what opportunities there are for courses, for our different research labs, see what's going on at Reed. That's different than, preparing some sort of studying for some particular area. Yeah, and it's great to be undecided. Maybe you're decided on neuroscience or psychology or biology, but you have no idea within those. They're really broad areas. So keep an open mind and don't commit too early to any one specialty.
Yeah. Surabhi, what were you going to say?
No, I was gonna say I definitely had like no prior oh, I want to do neuroscience. It was very much like I took the intro biology, intro psychology courses, and I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. And those two courses, like Michael and Kara said, are like they introduce you to I want to say a good chunk of the disciplines in each field. So if you don't like one part of it, there's bound to be something in a different part that you might be interested in. So you don't have to feel like you have to, because I got a couple of direct messages saying, do you feel nervous when you came for the first time at Reed? Yes, I felt nervous, but it's totally fine. There's imposter syndrome is always going to be a thing, but it definitely shouldn't hold you back from doing neuroscience at Reed.
Wonderful. Well, I think that brings us to time. And Surabhi, I know you have an obligation immediately after this. So I just want to first of all thank all of our professors and our student for joining us. Surabhi, thank you so much. Kara, Michael, this has been really fantastic, and I really appreciate the time and the energy that you guys have spent with us today. For all of our students who have joined us, thank you also for taking the time to come and learn about what neuroscience is like at Reed. I hope that this has been a great session for you all. I know I personally have learned a lot. And I know we have a couple of admitted students in attendance, so I definitely encourage you all to come visit us if you haven't already. We have Reed Admit Days running all through this month. These are my favorite events that we host, so I really hope that you all take the opportunity to come visit us. And for our students who are maybe still in the process of applying, we have a ton of other programming that's going on right now, including other faculty office hours, as well as more general sessions and information sessions about Reed. So thank you all. Thanks for your time, for joining us, and we hope to see you soon.